on free speech on college campuses and online. Silicon Valley has done a lot to clamp down on conservative speech. And as you may have seen just this week, Samantha Bee on her program attacked PragerU. PragerU is an outfit run by Dennis Prager that puts out educational conservative videos to YouTube. They rack up millions, some would even say billions of views if you total all of them together. But they're not happy with this. The left is attempting to clamp down on this, claiming that it's dangerous to be exposed to conservative ideas. Conservative ideas like free speech is a good thing. Conservative ideas like life begins at conception. It's not just that we're wrong, it's that we're dangerous. When they adopt that mentality that we're dangerous, and when they couple that with their belief that we don't exist as individuals, but rather as members of a corporate entity, you can understand why you see them do things like slap a teenager, or drive a truck into a voter registration booth, or shoot Steve Scalise. This is a very real threat to our way of life. It's a very real threat to civil government in the United States. That's sort of the broad sweeping reasons why I got into it. Socialism, attacks on free speech that I don't believe the party establishment has done enough to confront. And lastly, the really instigating issue that got me off the bench, that made me say I have to run, was the abortion issue, which stopped being an abortion issue in Virginia and became an issue about infanticide. I read the Virginia abortion law. It made no specification that doctors would only not be charged for murder if they allowed an infant who was going to die anyway to die. That's how they tried to spin. Well, if a child is born without lungs, what are you going to do? Charge a doctor with murder? No, that's not what the law said. Right? The law in Virginia that they tried to get passed said that you would be allowed to let any unwanted infant, as long as a single doctor said it would have an unhealthy impact on the mother's mental health, not even her physical health or mental health, that would be permissible. My time's about up here. That's a brief introduction to who I am and why I'm running. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Good evening. My name is Xyooj, and I'm also a candidate for Congressional District 4. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the leadership of CD4, Mickey, and all of the leadership in CD4 for putting this forum together. I know it's a difficult task bringing tables into the library. I know how cold it is out there, so I want to thank the leadership for putting this forum together so that we can get to know each other better. The candidates can get to know the citizens of CD4 better. I'm married. I have 4 beautiful children. I'm married to the love of my life, and she's also here this evening. I'm running for office because America has given me a lot, and so it is time for me to give back to America. Half a century ago, my family fled Laos because the communists took over our country. And they were looking for my father because my father worked for the Central Intelligence. And so we have no choice but to leave the country. And we literally have to walk out of Laos in fear of our lives and for my father's life. And like the classic American movie, The Sound of Music, Von Trapp family that left Austria because of communism. And that's what my family did. We left communism on foot, and we climbed every mountain, we crossed every stream, we follow every rainbow until we find our dream, and that dream is America. And I'm so happy to be here tonight because I am in the best country in the world. Could you please all put your hands together for this great nation of ours? Since our arrival in 1976, we've worked hard, and most of us have achieved the American dream. I'm an attorney by training. I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've been both as a prosecutor as well as a defense lawyer. I understand due process and understand about protecting the innocent, protecting the rule of law, and defending a defendant and make sure that they have a due process. I worked very hard prosecuting cases as a lawyer, serving one client at a time. But today I make a decision that what I like to do is to be able to serve many people at the same time. And the only way to do that is for me to run for this office and to give back to America what America has given me. So I want to tell all of you this evening a little bit about myself and what I've done. And I sincerely hope that you will support my candidacy and give me the opportunity to represent all of you in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Okay, is this microphone working? It is. Yes? Okay. No?
Tôi nói cho tôi mayor nó cho họ short view.
Hearing me now? I'm loud. All right. Just a reminder about the rules. We're going to do 3 minutes for your responses to the questions. And I'll try to remember to start with you guys in every other order, but I'm going to write it down so I can keep track.
Can we check through Michael?
Yep, I can stand up there too.
Tôi bắt này nó cho tôi president nó cho city for the Republican Party. Tôi bắt này và đu nè, tôi thằng lúc cho và purple nè.
Hello? 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 Hello?
How is that?
Phát chờ nó nhớ trong the lúc Shoreview Library, Shoreview, Minnesota. Tôi nói cho lâu xe.
So who here is from out of town?
Tôi nói cho Travis.
Like a city over?
Like not from Shoreview? Or?
There you go.
Gotcha. Before we get started, we're going to do the pledge.
Okay, we got started, I think a little premature, so please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We may proceed.
Okay, Shia, I'm going to start with you. Is that too loud now? Now I feel like it's really loud. What do you want to do about healthcare?
Healthcare is way too costly right now. And the premium is out of control. Our medication is out of control. The premium costs more than a mortgage. America can no longer afford that. And that happened because the Affordable Care Act. But it's not affordable. All of you know affordable care is not affordable. It is now a monopoly system that we cannot defeat and fight. And what we must do with healthcare is to reintroduce competition back into our medical system. It is competition that's going to give us the best results and the cheapest price. That is who America is, that we are here to compete, and these competitions are going to give us the best results. We have forgotten that. We have monopolized the system, and now we have a premium we cannot afford to pay, a medication that we cannot afford to pay as well. And so we must definitely tackle this issue. It's a major issue that is impacting everyone. Another thing I want to do with healthcare is making sure that America, the consumer, and the patient understands our bills. Who is protecting you when you go to a hospital and you receive a bill that's $10,000? Who is protecting to make sure that everything that is charged is accurate? No one. No one is protecting the American people. And if I'm elected to office, I want to make sure that those bills are legitimate and that there's going to be someone to protect the American people from the big healthcare insurance company, from the doctors, and from everyone else that is providing care for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Travis, same question. What do you want to do about healthcare?
You know, I think there's been a major oversight. To my knowledge, we've never had a conversation in this country about the cost of healthcare. We've had a lot of conversations about the cost of health insurance. But the cost of health insurance is not the same as the cost of healthcare. Think about it in terms of your car. The cost of your car is different than the cost of your car insurance. Now, the cost of your car insurance is based on the cost of the car and some other factors, but it's not the same thing. And if tomorrow the federal government came out and said, we want to make cars more affordable, so we're going to start putting tons of regulation on car insurance companies, well, that's not going to do anything to bring down the cost of the car. And all those additional regulations that the car insurance companies are going to have to go through is going to wind up raising the price of the car insurance. This is exactly what we saw happen with Obamacare. We failed to address the cost of health care and instead focused entirely on the cost of health insurance, put in tons of regulations, made it less competitive than ever, made it more difficult for these companies to operate, required people to buy insurance that they didn't want, changed policies so that people lost their doctors and lost their plans in spite of a promise from the president that they would not. Everything about it was a failure because it failed to address the cost of health care and instead focused on the cost of health insurance. What we've started to see with President Trump and what we want to continue seeing is legislation and regulation not on the insurance companies but on the providers. And not burdensome heavy regulation, but simply requirements that they make their prices available up front. I should be able to go into a hospital and ask them reasonable questions about what things cost, whether it be the cost of a simple procedure, or whether it be how much it costs to use one of their operating rooms for an hour, so that if I know I'm going in for surgery, I know roughly what it's going to cost. Now, if we start doing that, and we start doing that with stuff that's non-emergency care, you're going to see those prices change in emergency care as well. And that's going to empower consumers to make decisions about where they want to go for non-emergency care. It's going to make these institutions accountable for both emergency and non-emergency care. And that's the best way to start addressing this. You know, there's a lot of people who say we should just have the government take over. Let's just have government subsidized health care. Anybody can go anywhere they want. Similar to what they have in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, though, I'll end on this. Just this week, they decided that if you are racist or sexist, your doctors can refuse you care. Now, that might sound appealing, but keep in mind we're dealing with people who believe being a male inherently makes you a sexist, and being white inherently makes you a racist.
Thank you. Travis, I'll start with you on this question. What are your thoughts on correcting education in Minnesota?
The biggest things that we need to do for education, I'll say there's two things. One is enable people to make choices about where they want to send their kids to school. Not just between public schools, although they should be able to choose between public schools, but they should also be able to choose whether they want to bring their kids to private school, whether they want to homeschool them. That shouldn't be determined by your zip code. You should have agency in how you want to do that. There's no reason kids in a poor neighborhood shouldn't have access to a good school just because it's a few miles away. When it comes to education on a broader theme, though, we need to change the conversation about education, change the mentality. I have a 4-year degree from Bethel University. And I will say, going to college was the biggest mistake of my life. I have never once had a job that required a college degree. I'm still paying off student loans. It has never advantaged me once. Now, a 4-year degree is a great thing for some people. But this year, it's estimated that 60% of high school graduates, not 60% of graduates, 60% of 18-year-olds, 70% of overall graduates, will go to college. Now, I don't know how good your math skills are, but it's statistically impossible for 60% of the population to be in the top half of the population. So we know colleges and universities are taking people of below average aptitude. We know that those people are either flunking out, in which case, shame on the schools for fleecing them, or they're graduating, in which case, as an employer, what do I care if you have a college degree? It doesn't even indicate you're of average competence. So we really need to shift our thinking about college and encourage more people to go to trade school, encourage more people to go directly into the workforce, encourage people to start their own businesses, and encourage people to join the military, which is a perfectly valid and shouldn't be treated as a shameful thing to do.
She asked the same question. What are your thoughts on correcting education in Minnesota?
I support the charter school, more options and more choices for parents, the voucher program, where a parent can choose where to send their children to the best school. Again, America is all about competition and being the best. We must introduce competition into our educational system, making sure that the parents have the right and options to send their children to the school of their choices. That's very important. The charter school is forcing the public school to do a better job of teaching and making sure that the children are doing well. And so competition is something that we definitely need to continue to push to get a better education for our children. Second thing about education that I like to correct is that it's way too costly. I mean, colleges are way beyond our children's reach. And when they're done with education, they can't get out of these debts. They're in debts forever. That's what's wrong with our current education system right now. And it is that way because the federal government has taken over in allowing students and loan institutions to give more loans. And if the government allow students and institutions to give out more loans, the university and schools are able to charge more. And that continue to spiral out of control. And now you're talking about parents having to borrow, signing for their children to attend college, while the parents are still paying for their own college. We definitely need to change that. The other things that I need to change is the interest rate that our children are borrowing from these loans that they're taking out. It's like a credit card. You know, if you don't pay it on time and continue to accumulate, what the rate in about 12 years, you'll double from 100,000 to 200,000. Who's going to be able to pay that? We need to fix that rate. You know, we are investing in our children. We do not want to kill them with these debt. So it should be a one-time rate. Yeah, you know, if we want to charge 6.7%, it's like buying a car. If you pay a one-time interest on that loan, and you chop it up in pieces that the student can eventually pay it off someday and not have to pay like a credit card. That's something that we definitely have to change, because without that, college is going to be unaffordable and unattainable for our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Shia. I will start with you this time. Are you in favor of term limits for Congress? And if so, why?
I am definitely in support of term limits. As you can see in this impeachment process, we got career politician that has career wounds that continue to attack each other year after year. If you look at Schiff and Pelosi, they've been there for years, and the wounds, they continue to exhibit those wounds against each other. We need term limits. And if someone who's been there for 20 years and have not done much, setting them back for another 20 years isn't going to do anything. Right? That's why it's only 2 years. That's why it's only 2 years, so that you can pick the people that have better ideas and new vision to tackle the difficult problems of America, of what America is facing. The problems that America is facing today is very different from what they faced yesterday. And so you definitely need new vision, new blood, and new people to tackle new problems. And maybe new kids in the block, we won't fight so much because we've not fought before. Maybe we'll be more willing to work with each other and do what is best for America than for what is best for our party or what is best for our political career. So I definitely am in support of the term limit.
Thank you. Travis, same question. Are you in favor of term limits for Congress? If so, why?
I say this as somebody running against a 20-year incumbent. It would be really easy for me to come out against term limits. And it's a popular item to be in favor of. As the old saying goes, everybody hates Congress, but everybody loves their congressman. So it's easy to say I want term limits in place. But the fact of the matter is, when you put term limits on politicians, you're not restricting the power of that politician. You're restricting the ability of voters to elect whoever they want. Now, I think the voters in the 4th District have been making a mistake for the last 20 years, sending Betty McCollum to Congress, but it's my job to convince them of that. The place where we really need term limits is on Washington insiders, bureaucrats. People get hired when they're 22 years old, 23 years old, into the State Department, and then spend the next 40 years of their life working for the federal government, advancing their own agenda, sinking the entire city into the swamp. That's where we need term limits. What we should do, let's do a little history lesson. The reason people in Washington are there so long is because of something called civil service. And I'm not talking about the politicians, I'm talking about the bureaucrats. The reason they're there so long is because of something called civil service reform. It used to be that after the election, the president and the politicians would fire everybody in government that they didn't like and bring in all of the people that they owed favors to, all the people who helped on the campaign trail, all the people who helped wrangle up votes for them. It was a corrupt system, and it ended up with a lot of incompetent people working in these government jobs because you didn't really care whether the person was good at it or not. You just needed to give them a favor. But we overcompensated. We made these jobs far too secure. What should happen is when you're hired into the State Department, or you're hired into the Department of the Interior, or you're hired into the Department of Education, you should be hired for a 10-year contract. That'll give you time to work under multiple administrations so that whoever is in charge, whatever party they're in, can see whether or not you're willing to advance the agenda of the elected officials of this representative government, or whether you're working your own agenda for the state, for your own sake and your own view of what the state should be. I heard somebody say the other day, if you ask the average person in the State Department what their agenda is, they'll start telling you what Ukraine wants, or what Russia wants, or what China wants. But if you ask Donald Trump, he'll tell you what he wants and what America wants. I want people like Donald Trump to have more influence in how the government is run, and people like lifelong bureaucrats to have less.
Thank you. Travis, how are you going to beat Betty McCollum?
Decisively. We need to bring a new energy and a new attitude into the race. And I'm very enthusiastic to see Shia up here tonight running as well. When I met Shia a few weeks ago at the CD4 kickoff event, I had a Bible verse in my head. I think it's Proverbs 27:17. And it was, I don't know where it came from. It was in my head. And when I walked up to Shia, the first thing he said to me was, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another, which is Proverbs 27:17. So I'm pretty thrilled that we're both here and that we're bringing new energy and new excitement. I'm really excited to see a crowd like this show up for a discussion between the two of us. That's a start. The other thing we need to do is get our message out there. Now, I've been hosting events about every 2 weeks, meeting new people around the greater area here in CD4. I'll be in Stillwater tomorrow night from 6 to 8. If anybody's going to be in the area, feel free to stop on by to Maple Island Brewing. I'll be there. We need to start doing things like that to bring new people in. A lot of people have no exposure to Republicans, real, honest-to-goodness Republicans. Everything they know about Republicans, they know from MTV and, you know, The Daily Show and pop culture and CNN. And if that's your only exposure to Republicans, I mean, you're seeing parody. You know, you're not seeing what we're actually like. So making sure that people know who we are, making sure they know we have arguments, and getting to the roots of those arguments. A lot of times we start conversations way up here, but we haven't even discussed first principles, right? We need to agree on, or at least understand where each other are coming from when we talk about the word justice. There's a researcher named Jonathan Haidt. He does research on the psychology of morality. And he's found that if you ask conservatives and moderates, they can explain positions of conservative, moderates, and liberals. But if you ask liberals, they can only explain liberal positions. They cannot explain conservative or moderate positions. They genuinely don't understand us. And part of the reason for that is that they've never been exposed to our foundational arguments. We come in and we talk about, you know, we want lower taxes because it grows the economy. They hear that, and they hear us saying, you want the rich to get richer and you hate justice. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. So we've got to have those foundational principle discussions. What is justice? We can't assume that we any longer share a cultural memory, because frankly we don't. It's deteriorated. You can blame a lot of that on schools, universities for failing to give people a foundation in civics and in Western philosophy. But I think you can also blame a lot of it just on our own apathy and failing to get our message out there.
Thank you. Shia, how are you going to beat Betty McCollum?
We're gonna outwork her. I've never seen her not being at a Hmong New Year. She has the largest Hmong population. She cannot even find the time to come and give honor to our celebration year after year. I worked very hard within the Hmong community, within the minority community, and developing the necessary network for a day just like this. We're going to beat Betty because we have a better message and we have better ideas. We are with the best party, the Republican Party, the party that freed the slave with Abraham Lincoln, the party that defeated communism in Europe, Ronald Reagan, and the party that's going to make America great again, Donald Trump. We need to get that message out to the people, not just the everyday freedom-loving Republican, common, hardworking people, but to the new immigrants, the new Americans that are coming to America every day, that are becoming U.S. citizens and want to participate and want to give back, like myself. Yesterday, we were refugees. Today, we achieved the American dream. Tomorrow, we want to carry the weight of America. We want to give back to America what America has given to us. And that is why this party, the message that I intend to carry, is going to draw the new immigrants into this party. That's one of the key ways that we're going to be able to defeat Betty McCollum. She does not work very hard. She relies on other people to work for her. The Republican Party must be united at all levels. The senators that are running in CD4, the state representatives that are running in CD4, the city council that are running in CD4, we must all be united in order to defeat Betty McCollum, because it takes all of us in CD4 to defeat her. If we are united and that we get our message out to the new immigrants and to our supporter, we will be able to defeat her in November.
Shia, how will you sway St. Paul voters to vote for you that typically vote party line?
People ask me that questions all the time. We have many state legislature from St. Paul that are among American. Why would voters in St. Paul support me? And I tell them this story. I tell them the story about Detroit, of what happened to the center of Detroit if you've ever been there. You can buy a house there for $1. It died a horrible death because everything is free. The DFL party, the party of giveaway, they drove all of the hardworking people out of Detroit. And eventually there's no tax base to support that city. We give away pensions, everything is a giveaway, and when they take care of everyone and everything is free, look what happened to Detroit. If you look at the city of St. Paul and Minneapolis, is falling toward that trend. The party that gives it away creates more crime. You give you give your child a free toy, they don't care for it. They don't take care of it. You give people a free house, they don't take care of it, they destroy it. People need to earn it. And that's how I'm going to convert the voters in St. Paul to vote for me. Do we want a city that looks like North Oaks and Stillwater and Woodbury or Edina? Or do we want downtown St. Paul or North Minneapolis? It's the leader that we pick. It's the idea that we support. That's what we're going to get. And I would put it in this way. If you put a hardworking person in an ugly house, that person is going to clean up that house, going to paint up that house, and going to make sure that that house doesn't fall apart. But if you put a person that is entitled to everything in a mansion, that mansion will go down the drain in no time. That is how we're going to change the voters from St. Paul to support someone like me, because I am a leader that supports a city that's going to look like North Oaks and Stillwater and Woodbury and Edina. If we elect those type of leaders in St. Paul, we will get downtown North Oaks and we will get Stillwater in downtown St. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. How will you sway St. Paul voters to vote for you that typically vote party line?
One of the first things we have to do is have a ground game in the city of St. Paul. We have to take advantage of the presence that we already have there, the Republicans who already live in St. Paul. It's up to the candidate to develop that network, but it's up to the network to exist. We've got to connect with the people who live in St. Paul and have them start organizing neighborhood outreach groups. I don't mean you have to go door to door all throughout the neighborhood, but invite a couple of your neighbors over. Have a barbecue this summer. I'd go as the candidate. I'd meet them, form those relationships. Even if the candidate can't make it, if there's 4 of them going on at once, God willing, then it gives Republicans a chance to at least introduce themselves as Republicans to people. Another thing that, on the topic of barbecues that we should do, is have regular barbecues at parks. And just have free food. Free hot dogs. Come on out, meet the Republican candidate. We'll be here the first Saturday of every month for the next 3 months. I did a VBS down in Belize once, and the first day I think we had about 20 kids from the neighborhood come. And the second day I think we had about 60 kids from the neighborhood come. And the third day I think we had about 120 kids from the neighborhood come. By the fourth day we had about 200 kids showing up and we ran out of candy. Now I don't know that we're going to get 200 people showing up if we have free hot dogs, but it'll give us a chance And if you do it in that repeated fashion, if it's not just a one-off, but if you do it repeated, you'll give people a chance to know that you're there, get a familiarity, get a sense of comfort, and say, oh yeah, I missed that one, but let's go check it out. Or, yeah, my buddy Roy, he went, he liked it, so let's just go at least to some free food. We've got to do those things in order to build that kind of ground game. When we have conversations with people about policy, we have to start talking about the consequences of the policy and not just the intentions of the policy, right? I firmly believe that the Democrats who are driving St. Paul into the ground want what's best for the city. But their voters are looking at their intentions and not their consequences. Meanwhile, they're assigning to us, as I mentioned earlier, hostile intentions. The best way to overcome that is going to be through relationships and then conversations about those core values, about the foundational values. There's another element there that I think, well, I'm out of time. I've got 15 seconds, so I'll just go ahead and surrender the time.
Okay, Travis, what have you set up for your plan to activate? Do you have a group organized and ready?
I have volunteers already who are helping me organize events. As I mentioned, we'll be in Stillwater tomorrow night. I've got my campaign manager over here tonight doing a little bit of filming so that we can have some B-roll ready to go. We've got some advertisements that we're putting together right now, so keep your eyes open for those. As far as the sort of network that I was referring to in St. Paul, that I don't have yet. But that's part of why we're doing this, so that we can meet additional people, so that people will hear about us, so that we can start developing, hopefully, a motivation from people. Say, yeah, you know what? I do care about the 4th District. And I do want these candidates to meet my neighbors. And I do want to invite my friends over. That's the kind of thing that we've got to start doing. So I've got a little bit of I've got the core group ready to go, and we're operating already. But there's definitely more work to do there, and it's up to us to do it.
Thank you. Shia, what have you set up for your plan to activate? Do you have a group organized already?
Yes, I did, or yes, I do. My Hmong campaign manager is here. Not only Hmong, but really targeting the minority, especially the Asian community. So far, we have more than 100 volunteers. We did a campaign launch about a month ago. We got approximately 600 plus people that attended the event, and we raised close to $30,000. I have volunteers fundraiser all across the country helping me with this. And we are continue to organize and recruit volunteers from all across the citizens of CD4, not just from the Asian community. So we're building that. I'm developing my relationship with all of the candidates that are running for office at different level in CD4. I reach out to Congressman Emmer and his team, Jason Lewis and his team, and so we're working with those managers along with our manager as well. But we do have a team in place. Our goal is to have a volunteer group of more than 300 people close to the actual endorsement, and we are working very hard every day to grow our volunteers, to get our message out, to craft our message, and to start responding to what McCollum's doing already against myself in the Hmong community, where she issued a statement about the president negotiating with the Laos to try to deport the Hmong back into Laos. She put out a statement which is not accurate and is scaring the heck out of many Hmong people to be afraid of the Republican Party, so they wouldn't support me and they wouldn't support the president. So we need to counter that already. But I do have a team in place. I have 6 American advisors that have been through the battles in CD4 that are working. A former American Maplewood Bob Cardinal, who's here this evening, and so other people, Ms. Gallagher, Carol Gallagher, serves on my advisory team as well. So I have a team, we're ready to go, and we're going to hit the road tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Shia. And you only get 3 minutes, so try to pick
All
the
right.
best ones.
All right.
Because this could be a long answer. What policies of Betty's do you disagree with? Remember, you only have 3 minutes. And with which policies would you replace them with?
So if you looked at her last push for re-election, she said her top priority is issuing federal funding. Betty's here to give away our money. She wants to give away tax money like Bernie Sanders to every organization that supports her. That's her top priority. I want to give federal funding to organization. She's talking about giving away. What I would like to change about what she's doing is that she needs to talk about how she's going to grow 3M. She needs to talk about how she's going to grow the biomedical company like Abbott and Medtronic in this town. She needs to talk about how she's going to get Medtronic to return all those tax overseas back into the United States. That's what I like to talk, because those major corporations are what drives CD4. They provide great jobs, great pays, and they allow all of us to live freely. Do I still have time?
Minute and a half.
Yep. And so that's what I don't like about her party. And the other thing I don't like about Betty is her critiques of everything that the president and the Republican does. According to all of her critiques, the sky is falling. We should all be dead because the president is in charge. And that's not true. And she's the main supporter of Pelosi, a right hand of Pelosi. Pelosi is the person that goes and rips the Constitution right in front of the world. No matter what you do, if you're elected to lead this country like Betty and Pelosi, you have no right to shame the American people, to shame this country that way. That's what I would change about her.
Nay bột nó rong thế.
Okay, thank you, Travis. What policies of Betty's do you disagree with? And with which policies would you replace them?
Well, for one thing, I don't want to impeach Donald Trump. The bigger question here is this, because it's a litany, as you joked when you said. I mean, we could go through an unending list of where I disagree with Betty McCollum. But the real issue with Betty McCollum is within her own party. She's not a leader. Now, I don't agree with Betty McCollum, but neither do the progressive Democrats. I mean, this is somebody who at the same time that she is one of the leading voices in Congress for impeachment and removal of Donald Trump because he is a fundamental threat to this country and a danger to all humanity, votes to expand his authorization to use military force in the Middle East. Well, which is it? It can't be both. He can't be both a psychotic, unhinged maniac who's going to kill us all and somebody you want to give a bigger gun to. That's the problem with Betty McCollum. She's not willing, not capable, not competent to provide leadership in Washington. I'm not happy about it. I mean, I'm not happy with her positions on the issues, but I'm not happy with the fact that she's not even contributing anything to the discussion. And I know a lot of people who have voted for her in the past aren't happy with it either. They're dissatisfied with her ability to actually get results. They're dissatisfied with her failure to follow through on her principles. Take a look at her Twitter feed sometime. There's a lot of negative feedback from Democrats there. But backtracking for 1 second, my motto or slogan in this campaign is raise the debate. And the reason I adopted raise the debate was twofold. One, because I thought it sort of harkened to mind that the silencing that conservatives are seeing around the country. And I don't believe we should be afraid to debate issues, and we should be equipped to debate issues. But also because we need a higher level of discourse. And clearly, Betty McCollum isn't capable of providing that, even to the satisfaction of her own side. She can't provide that leadership. She can't provide that voice. It's time for a new voice in Congress, and I'm asking to be that voice.
Travis, do you plan to abide by the endorsement?
Absolutely. I don't know that I need 3 minutes to
No,
respond.
you don't. You don't.
Yes, I will absolutely abide by the endorsement. I will just say a couple of things. Look, the most important thing for us to do here is defeat Betty McCollum. The most important thing for us to do is put forth the strongest candidate, fight the toughest battle, and believe me, anywhere Shia needs me. If he gets the endorsement, I will honor the endorsement, and anywhere he needs me, I will be with bells on to help out in any way that I can. This is a significant thing. I love watching the old video of Ronald Reagan dropping out and endorsing Gerald Ford at the 1976 RNC convention. It's a great speech he gives, and yes, yes, I will honor the endorsement.
Thank you. Shia, same question. Do you plan to abide by the endorsement?
Absolutely. And the reason why I would do that is that our party need to be united. And I agree with Travis that through this competition, you have to decide which two of us is the best to fight her. But we should never fight if you decide which one I should go. So I would definitely support Travis if he's the endorsed candidate. But we need to compete, and you need to listen to us and determine whether I am a better candidate or that he's a better candidate to go against Betty, because we definitely want to win.
Shia, what are your ideas on fixing our broken immigration system?
The failure of 9/11, the failure of immigration is what led to the 9/11 attack. I don't see our current Congresswoman doing anything to sharpen and to fix our system. I don't see them doing what they need to do to make sure that the backlog of immigration cases does not go 3 years. I was in immigration court the other day. I have to wait 3 years for my clients to go back to have a hearing. That need to change. And so who is to blame for that? The people that you have already sent there. The people who are already there that are not doing their job to fix our immigration system. We got to get rid of this backlog. Not only that, but when we call immigration, we want a live person. Please, someone. When I call my government, especially immigration, could you get a live person on the phone to speak with me instead of sitting there as a lawyer 45 minutes charging my client all that time just to talk to a real live person? That's what's wrong with immigration. No wonder those terrorists snuck through there, right? We need to fix that, and we definitely need to fix our wall. You can't fix immigration if you don't fix that wall. Without that wall, there are so many people going through there. We got 15 million illegal people telling us that that wall is not working, that our immigration system is broken. It's time to fix it. If you elect me to support me to go to Congress, that is one of my top priorities, that we need to fix it. And not only that, but if you don't fix that system, we got millions of people that want to bring money here to visit America and to help us pay for our national debt, which currently stands at $23 trillion. We need to be creative to allow people to come to America, to learn about democracy, to come here and not get stuck here, and they need to go back home. But we cannot do that. We cannot tap into those resources of the true tourism, terrorism. The two people that want to visit here. You know, I'm back visiting relatives in Southeast Asia. Everybody wants to come to America to visit us, to spend money, and to do that. But they're not allowed to come here because it takes forever for immigration to process that, and they're afraid of everybody because they are always short-staffed. We need to fix that system to prevent a 9/11 from repeating itself, and we need to fix that system in order for us to tap into the tourist money that could really help us pay for this national debt that we're in.
Travis, what are your ideas on fixing the broken immigration system?
Let's be real when we're talking about that question. The image that everybody has in their mind today when you talk about broken immigration system is immediately kids in cages. We can't run away from that. We've got to accept the fact that that is where the conversation is going to start from in the mind of the average person. And I think it is tragic that these kids are in cages. I think it's tragic that any of these people ended up in suboptimal facilities. And yes, the left has lied about them. And yes, the left has lied and said that they are concentration camps. And yes, the left has lied and said people are drinking from toilets, and none of that is true. But I think we can all agree it's unideal that we have these camps set up on the border in the first place. So why did that happen? It happened because we allowed ourselves to develop a reputation for being soft. People were coming here convinced that if they just knew the magic words, then they'd get in. They were asking for coaching from people. Well, what do I have to say in order to get ICE to just say, okay, they're a refugee, we'll let them in? And we can't operate that way. We need to have our reputation be that we are strong but fair, tough but fair. If you reach the border, you will go back. I'm not happy about the camps, but I am happy that the image that is developed in the minds of those who don't already live here is starting to shift and change. And they are starting to see, oh gee, you don't just say open sesame and they let you in. There is a process, and you have to go through it. Even if you try to jump the rail, there is still going to be a consequence for you. As far as people who are already here, that also needs to be dealt with. And I suspect that one of the ways that we could address that, while still maintaining legitimacy, it becomes very easy to say, let's just throw the rule book out. Let's just ignore the rules. Let's just give clemency to everybody who's here. Or, well, we'll deal it with some other day. No, we need a legitimate way to deal with it now. And I would propose an idea that I first heard from Newt Gingrich several years back. And that's establishing a draft board style review system where people from the community will hear the appeal made by somebody who has been here illegally. And that draft board style commission will then have the final yay or nay. I'm certain that I won't agree with all of their decisions, but we need a legitimate way to do this, and that would be a legitimate way for citizens to actually play a role in there. In doing so, we can reduce the backlog that's in place, and we can trust people. If we've already given up on trusting people in our communities more than we trust the central government, then we're really up the creek without a paddle.
Thank you, Travis. In the 2018 election, a big part of the swing vote was suburban women who voted Democrat. How do you propose we address this?
I think there's a lot of suburban women who are very uncomfortable with the idea of anyone who decided that they are a woman today being able to use the same bathroom as their daughter. We have seen a tremendous rise in transgenderism and in discussion around the transgender issue, and a borderline psychotic reaction to this, where now even posing the idea of two sexes is something that people find triggering and uncomfortable. New York City, I've lost track, but New York City, I think, had officially something like 64 genders you can identify as in New York City. And in fact, employees of the city in New York face potential penalties if they say something like, there are only two genders. This is madness. This is insanity. And I don't think that suburban housewives are insane. And I think they can look at something as obviously deleterious as that rejection of basic science and be concerned. My whole life, I've heard that Republicans are the anti-science party. Oh, Republicans don't believe in evolution. Oh, Republicans don't believe in climate science. Oh, Republicans think the earth is flat. Let me tell you something. Transgenderism in its current form, let's call it gender denialism, is no better than flat eartherism. If you're going to come out here and say there's 64 genders, that's just as unscientific and ludicrous as saying the earth is flat. I think suburban housewives know that, and I think we need to start having that conversation with them.
Thank you. Shia, in the 2018 election, a big part of the swing vote was suburban women who voted Democrat. How do you propose we address this?
Suburban wives are some of the hardest working people out there. And they are the people that understands the budget of the family, how to take the children to hockey or to games, to take care of the house, to pay the bills. And they're sick and tired of the amount of money that they made to take care of their family are all being thrown out the door by government wage. If we don't fix that problem, they're not going to support us. They need to hear the message of the party that is going to be able to allow them to keep and protect the family and to take the children and pay for the things that they really need to take care of the family. And so that's what we need to do. We need to make sure that they understand what we stand for in terms of making sure that we don't overtax them, that they're able to get equal pays for equal work. Those are issues that is very important to them. If they're able to provide for their family, they'll be more willing to support what we're doing. And if we tackle medical bills, that are what I alluded to earlier, so that they can afford medical insurance for their family, so that they can take care of their mother and father who's old and that needs help. Those are the things that we need to talk about that matters to the suburban woman. And I think somehow that message got lost out there. We need to let them know that we believe that the suburban women are a central core of what makes the suburban such a vital part of our society. And we need to respect them, to treat them that way. If our party sends a message and we carry through what I have stated, I believe that we will win the vote back.
Thank you. Shia, how will you work to negotiate across the aisle?
So I'm a trained mediator for a reason. I'm a lawyer. I know how to fight if you want me to fight, but I also know how to negotiate. Also, mainstream and cultural negotiation. It's a skill that you should never offend your opponent, like what the left is doing with the president, like what Pelosi and Betty's doing with the president. You continue to bash and trash your opponent, you will never be able to negotiate. We are elected officials. We represent the United States. We need to treat each other with respect with the words we call each other. We don't call each other fraud and liar and 100% lie and 1,000 lies. If we use that type of language, we will never be able to cross the aisle. I'm going to be much better at reaching the aisle. For the last 20 years of my legal practice, I have to learn how to get along with everyone, with law enforcement and with defense, with defendants and with victims, advocates and with victims, and with different minority groups and with mainstream. I've learned how to get along with everyone. I've handled many mediation cases, as well as pioneering cultural mediation with the law school. So I know how to treat people the right way, to make sure that it's the common grounds that we have that bring us together. At the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that the DFL and the conservative can agree on, like the importance of love and family, the importance of being able to provide for your family and take care of your family and spend time with your family. These are the values of America. And to protect freedom, we can all agree on that. But we have to learn how to treat each other with respect. Without that, we're not going to be able to cross the aisle. Our opponent has clearly shown all you need to do is read everything that she's written about our president and the Conservative Party, there's no way to get an agreement if you treat each other that way. That's something that I would never do, and I would definitely do a much better job of crossing the aisle, because I know what I need to do in order to win their support and why they should support our position.
Travis, how will you work to negotiate across the aisle?
I think it's time the Democrats started wondering how they can negotiate with us. Election after election, even when Republicans win, we treat it like a loss, and we say, how can we negotiate? How can we compromise now? For years we were doing that. And for years the capital of Israel didn't go to Jerusalem. And for years we didn't see the kind of tax reforms that we wanted to see. And for years we didn't see the wall getting built. Because as soon as we won, we said, well, now how do we compromise? We needed a shift in the mindset that we have in Washington. One that goes away from us asking, how little conservatism can we surrender? And starts asking, how much conservatism can we win? Yes, at some point, you have to have those relationships. And she is absolutely right. There needs to be a higher level of respect in Washington. But frankly, I don't think it's Republicans who need to improve our level of respect towards Democrats. I think this is a pretty one-sided failing in civility. And frankly, I reject the premise of the question. I don't think it's something that the onus is on us for. I think it's time for Republicans to start standing strong. Democrats are resolute. They're not backing off. And if we show a degree of plasticity, they're not going to see it as a show of good faith on our part. They're going to take it as weakness. And they're going to come at us with everything they got, just like they have been for as long as I can remember.
Thank you, Travis. What are your thoughts on climate change and green policies?
The biggest thing that we need to do when it comes to climate change, when it comes to green policies, when it comes to the environment, is focus on U.S. energy production. I'm not interested in getting bogged down in all of the details of questions about climate change. I've heard people argue that the modeling is different, and we all remember ClimateGate, I'm sure, where WikiLeaks released all that information that showed that climate scientists were actually manipulating the way data was presented. As somebody who took a couple of stats classes, I know that depending on what kind of statistical test you use, yes, you can change the results of the data. I don't know enough about statistics, though, to tell you whether or not the right kinds of tests were being used in those models. But let's focus on solutions that we can all agree with. Whether you believe in climate change or not, whether you believe it's man-made or not, we all like clean air, we all like clean water, we all like spaces to hunt, fish, camp, and hike in. So how do we get them? The answer to that is nuclear. Nuclear power is clean, it's safe, it's reliable, and it's ready to be deployed today. The United States currently has 2,500 utility-level solar production facilities. So we're not just talking panels on the side of someone's house, but actual utility-level contributing to U.S. Production and consumption of electricity plants. 2,500 of them that are solar. They produce 2.3% of our electricity. We have 60 nuclear plants. They account for 20% of our electricity. The nation of France gets 98% of its electricity from nuclear plants. Over and over again, I hear people say we need all of the above energy solutions. The problem is when you try to move in every direction at once, you wind up going nowhere. Nuclear is the answer. Nuclear is the key. Nuclear will work. Nuclear is here today and it's ready to be used. Nuclear is the answer to any green question people have for me.
Thank you, Sia. What are your thoughts on climate change and green policies?
The science is out that climate change is happening. We don't need the science to really understand that it is happening. it's warmer in Minnesota. Sometimes it's actually colder in Minnesota. Right? It's happening. Floodings are more frequent, and we must do something about it. But the problem is not that the science is not accurate. The problem is to enforce an agreement around the world that is fair and that it would reduce emission of carbon. How are we going to do that? The president backed out of the Paris Agreement because it's not fair. How do you force or make sure that China and India will comply with that agreement? You can't. We can't trust a communist country to comply. So we have an agreement that's not fair. Now we're fighting we're fighting a battle with our hands tied behind our back. That's what happened during the Vietnam War. The United States signed an agreement in France not to intervene. Well, the communist North Vietnamese went through Laos, not following that agreement, and attacked the South. That's why our forces were created in the first place. So the problem is how we're going to enforce the law around the world so that we can have a clean air and clean climate. But we cannot be forced into an agreement that will prevent the United States from maintaining our power and ability to compete in the world. We should never do that. And so my solution is a comprehensive approach. I do not believe that nuclear is a solution because look what happened at the tsunami in Japan, right? When the tsunami came in, that nuclear facility went out into the sea. It's still polluting the environment and killing everyone. We are having way too many earthquakes for us to trust nuclear alone. I think a comprehensive approach is much better. You got wind, you got electricity, like a hybrid. Now that's a good solution, right? Getting more for the amount of gallon we have is better. And so if we can add hydrogen, and we can add other new sources, solar, now we get our car at 100 miles a gallon. That should help us. So my approach is a comprehensive approach, not simply one solution, but multiple solutions, and making sure that an agreement around protecting the earth does not tie the hands of the United States from competing.
Thank you. Shia, how will you work to protect the Second Amendment?
We need to make sure that our highest court are appointed by judges that is going to enforce the Constitution. Because the right to bear arms is very important. As we learned when the communists took over our country in Laos, they came and dressed in white. It's kind of strange when I saw the President's State of the Union where the left all wear white. It scared me a little bit, like how come they dress white like the communists that took over our country? The next thing the communists wanted us to do was to surrender our weapon. Because the state will protect you. Really? We don't believe in that, do you? We don't have enough law enforcement in here to protect our family. You know that. I know that. And so for us to give up the right to protect our own family in this country, we should never give up that right. We need to educate our people about the right to bear arms, to use the arm safely. It's not the weapon that kills. It's the people that kill. I use this analogy. When a plane crashed and killed 200 people, do we get rid of the plane? Is that what we're doing? Don't fly anymore. Get rid of all the planes. Don't fly because it kills. Oh, by the way, let's get rid of all the cars. Because a car kills a human every minute. Car kills. Let's get rid of cars. Let's just walk, right? Maybe the Congress lady can ride a horse from here to DC. Why don't we do that, right? Because that's gonna really help us. Let's get rid of cell phone. So she could just maybe go back to the old phone. Because this thing, the cell phone, well, that's going to contribute to the environment as well. So the Second Amendment is very important. We should never lose that right. And we need to educate our people, especially our young people, about what they need to do to protect themselves. Because that's what happened to the Jews. During Hitler's rule, they surrendered all of their weapons. And we should be very wary of any party that wants to get rid of our right to bear arms.
Thank you. Travis, how will you work to protect the Second Amendment?
Well, she is absolutely right that the key to that on a federal level is the Supreme Court. We have to make sure that we have justices there and judges in federal courts that are dedicated to the protection of the Second Amendment and our ability to preserve our own lives. One of the interesting things that's been happening lately is a huge uptick in the number of trap shooting teams in high schools. So I'm very encouraged to see more and more young people getting exposure to this. When my dad was a kid in high school, he always tells me this. When he was a kid in high school, right after class, they would immediately go hunting. So half the guys at White Bear High School back in, this would be the late 1950s, had guns in their car. The high school kids, because they wanted to go hunting right after class. We got away from that for quite a while, where kids just weren't really exposed to guns, except maybe in action movies or video games. So seeing a rise in trap shooting is really exciting for me, because it shows that there's a cultural return that's starting to take place there. And an interesting side note, high school trap shooting is the only high school sport that has never had an injury in Minnesota. So.
Thank you. Travis, how important are international alliances to the future success of the USA?
That's a great question. One of the terms that Donald Trump started using that everybody had a very strong reaction to, positive or negative, was America First. And I think it is such a great slogan, and I think it is so true, and I think it is so misunderstood by many people. America First does not mean America alone. I think of it as when you're in an airplane, and they always give it the little safety demonstration ahead of time. What do they always say? If masks fall from the ceiling and you're traveling with small children, make sure you put your mask on before you try to help anybody that's accompanying you. Why? Because if you try to put the mask on the kid and you can't breathe, you're going to wind up passing out and neither one of you is going to get the oxygen. The reason I support the America First approach to foreign policy is because we need to have a strong country that's able to take care of itself. Jordan Peterson always says, clean your room, right? Start with what you're responsible for. And we're responsible for our own country. We need to be a strong country, capable of defending itself, or we're not going to be an ally worth having. We also need to be looking for our own interests. Not just the interests of, well, as I said earlier, the State Department will look at different countries around the world, and depending on what country they're assigned to, they will come back with, here's what that country wants, here's what we need to give them. But that shouldn't be the mindset. The mindset should be, what do we want, what's in our interest, and now what do we have to give that country to get it? I'm not against the cooperation, I'm just saying it is cooperation, it's not charity. And a lot of the mindset around foreign policy changed to the United States as a great dispenser of charity to the world. It's sort of a misguided, altruistic approach. It's not sustainable, and it wasn't working. It didn't make us any friends. Everybody just thought we were more gullible. They weren't impressed by us. They weren't more willing to work with us. They just knew, hey, we can get what we want from the United States. So I've been very encouraged to see pressure put on NATO, to see countries actually start meeting their commitments, because if those countries aren't meeting their commitments, NATO's not going to be the strong alliance that we need it to be. I want a strong NATO. And it's up to the other countries in NATO to keep it strong just as much as it's up to us. So, I'm a big fan of international alliances. I'm also a big fan of making sure that they are coordinated and managed by the United States in our own interest.
Thank you. Shia, how important are international alliances to the future security of the USA?
Very important. America cannot maintain freedom in the world alone. Our national debt of $23 trillion came a lot from protecting the world all alone. And other countries that can and should support are not doing their fair share. I applaud the President for forcing the European Union to do their part to protect the United Nations and to protect NATO. That's what we should do. The alliance is important, but we need to develop that relationship with all of the countries around the world, the freedom-loving country that are still with us. Other forces, the communist forces, that do not want to see freedom succeed, they're working hard to develop their alliances against the United States. So we want to maintain the life that we do here in this country, to be free. Building alliances and sharing the burden of freedom with all of our allies is absolutely a necessity. That's something that I definitely need to support and encourage the President to continue to do, to make sure that our allies understands that we treasure their relationship, that we have a common cause to maintain freedom around the world, and that we must stick together if we want to be free.
Thank you. Shia, have you studied the Founding Fathers? And if so, what have you learned?
Yes, I have. The Founding Father, Benjamin Franklin, or George Washington, the person that made this country possible, because he made a decision to defend this country and to start this country so that we can have America. The Founding Fathers are the ones that came out and put the Constitution together, that organized the original 13 states together because they need to be united in alliance against monarchy from England. The Founding Father has the courage to create a balance of power of the executive, legislative, and judicial branch. A balance of government that allow our country to become the best and the most powerful country on earth. We have this balance of system that the Founding Father created. And that is why we have the country that we do. And that is why we're able to go through the problem that we do without killing each other. Even in this impeachment process, there was a rule of law. It was a constitution that the attorney argued, and that the people voted according to what the Founding Father created in the system to protect freedom and democracy in this country. And so what I found out, I am truly at awe at how intelligent they are and what courage they have to come together to create a law that all men are created equal. That is very important. So that's what I learned about the Founding Father, their ability to create the documents that still control our country today, and that's what made America the best country in the world.
Thank you, Travis. Have you studied the Founding Fathers? If so, what have you learned?
I have studied the Founding Fathers. In fact, my bachelor's degree is in U.S. history, so tonight is the first time I've ever used it. I will say, sadly, though, that even with a bachelor's degree in U.S. history, we never read the Federalist Papers. And so this last summer, when I was thinking about running for office, I went out and I picked up a copy, and I would go walk around Lake Nokomis near my office, and I would read on my lunch break. And there's an old saying I heard that the founders of America were a group of geniuses who set up a system that could be run by a bunch of idiots. And when I look at the state of Washington today, I see just how accurate and almost prescient that saying was. One of the underlying themes in the Federalist Papers that you don't usually hear about is a rejection of democracy. We use the term democracy colloquially to mean any time you have elections. And that's fine, I suppose, in day-to-day speak, but it really does sort of cloud the issue. Our founders didn't like democracy. They were afraid of democracy. And I've been concerned as I've seen more and more a command for democracy coming from the left. Our founders had enough humility to recognize that without a strong constitution, and without a belief that there are other people who deserve to dedicate their lives to the maintenance of a nation, and that those people should be selected by elections. The alternative to that is mob rule. And as we've watched the left proclaim the 2016 election illegitimate, and the 2018 Georgia election illegitimate, and we're already hearing rumors about how the 2020 election is going to be illegitimate, and we're seeing calls to abolish the Electoral College, and even some people calling to abolish the Senate, because none of these institutions are democratic. It shows me how wise our founders were to recognize the threat of democracy. And it shows me that the real threat is nothing in our system. It's a lack of humility in recognizing the wisdom of the system.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. We'll do 5 minutes with each candidate for closing statements. And Travis went first in opening statements, I believe, so we'll let Shia go first for closing statements. But before we do that, I again want to thank CD4 for hosting. Congratulate you both on your candidacy. It takes a lot of courage to step up, so I applaud you for that. And thanks to Mickey for asking me to come in moderate. It's been my pleasure. And the timekeeper, that's a tough job. So with that, we'll go ahead and start 5 minutes for closing statements. Shia, you have the floor.
I want to thank the leadership of CD4 once again for putting this event together. I want to thank all of you for showing up tonight to listen to Travis and myself talk about what we believe in, talk about issues that are important to all of you. And that's very important. In fact, that's what we should do when we're elected, that we should continue to have this conversation with all of the citizens of CD4 so that we would know what to do and what type of vote and position that we need to take once we're in Congress. I decided to run because I and my people have paid the ultimate price. We lost 30% of our population defending freedom. So if anybody that should understand that freedom is not free, I should, or the Hmong Americans should, or all the other races that lost a lot of people for freedom should understand the price of freedom. And then we need to treasure the freedom that we have in this country daily. And then we need to protect it with everything that we have to make sure that we do not lose this freedom. And for a long time now, it looks like America has forgotten what freedom is. I'm running because I want America to understand that message, that she has given me so much, that I'm able to achieve the American dream. That here in America, an Afro-American boy can become Tiger Woods. And here in America, a young Hmong women can win gold Olympic gymnastic on behalf of the United States. Or that a Hmong refugee, born in Laos, raised and educated in the United States, can achieve the American dream and run for the highest office of this land. The fact that I have that opportunity says everything about America. And that America is the greatest country in the world, and the world looks up to America. It is time for America to elect new leaders with new visions and new ideas to bring America together to solve the real difficult issues that really impact America, and not about career politician running for political point and supporting their political party. That needs to end, and that is why I'm running. If I'm honored enough to win your support, I will not let you down. Thank you.
Thank you, Shia. Travis, 5 minutes.
Well, let me start by also thanking Heidi for moderating, Shia for participating in this tonight, Mickey and Michelle for putting so much organization into this. Anybody else who helped, who I don't know your names as well, thank you. And Dave, the timekeeper, who I have to admit, sitting here watching, you can't see him, but he's not using a stopwatch. He's got his wristwatch off, and he's set there, and it looks like a Norman Rockwell painting, with these three people at the table, and Dave looking at his wristwatch, just attentively staring at it. And it got me thinking about those old Norman Rockwell paintings, and those old neighborhood feels, the old idea that River City, Iowa was a real place. We are a citizen republic. That is why we are successful, and that is why we're worth preserving. But the rise of socialism is incompatible with that. The rise of socialism, the implementation of socialism, eradicates that. That's why I got into the race. Because I want a little more Norman Rockwell and a little less Karl Marx. We need free speech in order to do that. We need free speech in order to advocate for our ideas and in order to preserve that way of life. And it's a way of life worth preserving. And we need to protect life, whether it be an elderly person who the death panels are considering refusing medical attention to, or a newborn infant whose mother didn't want it. I care about those lives. I care about this republic. I care about having your support. I hope I can count on it at the convention here in a few weeks. Thank you all very much.
Mickey, I don't know if you had any closing words, but again, thank you all for coming tonight and for your thoughtful questions and your relatively good penmanship. There wasn't a lot that I really had to translate, and again, congratulations to you both. Best of luck.
Thank you both. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Safe trip home.